HTML5 also helps you validate your forms so that they can be checked to make sure that the data is valid before it's submitted to the server. So here I have a standard, fairly typical form. It's got a name, email address, phone number, URL, job description, need response by, how much can you spend, and the minimum value that you want submitted. And I have labeled each of these fields, as you can see, with a little star if they're required. But right now, if you were to submit the form, it would send it empty. It doesn't care. There's nothing in there to say this field is required. So let's go in and add a required attribute. I've got the class required, but that just gives me styling ability. It doesn't actually make the field required in the form. So I'm just going to add the attribute required. And you don't actually need anything more than the word required. And I'm going to add this to all of my required fields. Make sure you add it to the input field and not the label. It won't work if you add it to the label. And I'm going to add it down here to the number one that I have required. It's got a class of required, so I'm going to add required to that as well. And then I'm going to save it. How this works depends on the browser. So I'm going to show it to you in Chrome because Chrome is fairly spectacular when it's checking for required values. So I'm going to preview this in Chrome. Here's my HTML form as it looks just like you would expect. However, if I submit it empty, Google actually yells at you, please fill out this field. So I'll enter that field and submit. Please fill out this field. All right, I'll enter that field. Hey, it's actually checking to see if I included an @ in the email address. And if I didn't, it's going to complain at me. I bet it would do the same for a URL if that field were required. But then, like, if I still submit the request, it's going to ask me for that @ in the email address, and I'll submit it. And the job description is marked as required as well. I had to get rid of it here. So if you click on submit request, it still wants me to fill in this number, which we knew. And so we're going to give it a number. And then if we submit it, it submits the value. Now this form, it doesn't seem to do anything except clear the field, but we did get past all the required fields. You can also validate your form against things like the phone number. We have a placeholder here that's telling people how to submit their telephone number. But most of the time, if you give somebody a recommendation, fill in the form with your telephone number, put parentheses around the area code, etc., they'll do it wrong and they'll put dots instead of dashes, or, it's just a guarantee. So you can actually come in and use HTML5 to validate your form. We're going to go into the form input field and we're going to add a pattern. Now this pattern uses regular expressions to define how the phone number should be held. And in this case, I want it to be an open parenthesis and then any number from 0 to 9 3 times, and then a close parenthesis, then a space, then again any number from 0 to 9 3 times, then a dash, then any number from 0 to 9, and that should be repeated 4 times. If we save this in here so it has this pattern, then if we preview it in Chrome, and we have to give all of our fields their fake content so we can get to it, you get to the phone number, and if we just type 4444, it says please match the requested format because you haven't filled in the field correctly. Obviously, you have to do 444, 444. And again, if you make a mistake and just go like that 7 times, it'll still say please match the requested format because Google Chrome has been given a specific format for this phone number that you need to match. That's the pattern. If you had made the URL field required, then if you type something other than, it would pop up and say, no, that's not a URL. So let's try doing that. We just have to make it required, and we'll save it, and then we'll preview in Chrome, give our fake name and email address. Please enter a URL. Now, One thing to note is that that's actually different text than what it said for the name. The name is just a required field, so when you submit it without a name, please fill out this field, is what Chrome says. Lots of browsers have the ability to validate forms, and they'll do it in many different ways. Chrome just does it the most spectacularly, as I noted. And so that's how you can validate forms using HTML5.